Today, we pay homage to our mothers, the women who birthed us, watched us grow, wiped our noses, and stuck Band-Aids on our knees, and kept their fingers crossed that we would turn out all right. Today, 4 of us will share with you our stories of mothering. Jessica, Melanie, Catherine, and I. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So, pregnancy and childbirth are so often associated with muted colors, pastels, baby blue, baby pink, baby, baby, baby. It lulls one into a false sense of pregnancy as a gentle and delicate process. And labor is something very ladylike, and quite unlike the bright shades of red that it so often is. The reality is that the whole process, from start to finish, for many of us, is scary, with terror and fear and overwhelming emotions at every turn. With the way pregnancy and childbirth are portrayed in our society, we so often forget that for many women in the world, and for most of human history, pregnancy, labor, childbirth, everything about it, there are processes fraught with danger, fear, and for those of us that came through mothering through our own biological means, it can be a really terrifying process from start to finish. I can vividly remember about a week and a half before I gave birth, calling my mother and sobbing hysterically on the phone for 30 solid minutes about all of my fears regarding the approach of childbirth and all of the terror about the approach of motherhood itself. Who I would become, what it meant for me to leave behind the person that I was and replace her with this unknown entity, this mother, this person that was unlike me completely, I assumed. The version that was unknowable to me until I would be in the middle of it with no takesy-backsies. How do you prepare for parenthood? How do you prepare for mothering, this crazy attempt at self-preservation across the generations that we are told by society has all of this meaning and all of this richness and all of these expectations about who you are and who you should become when you suddenly have young future in your hands that you're responsible for? I suspect that many of us have gone through the process of leaving the hospital with some impossibly tiny bundle of infant and having similar feelings of disbelief. Are these medical professionals really letting me leave the hospital with this on my own or with a partner, whatever? We're allowed to go with a baby. Okay. Aren't I still a child myself, somehow? I have to make sure that this creature eventually transforms from this little squirming, breakable ball of needs into a fully functional, compassionate member of human society. It seems impossible and completely overwhelming. For my first delivery, I had it all planned out. I had a midwife. I was planning a home birth and a water pool. It was going to be a profound, gentle experience, a moment where I got to commune with the power of womanhood and peace and power. I have friends that experience labor just this way. I have a friend with a labor video where she's in a water pool and she sighs and her husband's rubbing her bath and she exhales and makes a low moan and her baby is birthed into warm life and it's beautiful and it's touching, and my birth plan did not happen that way at all. I started with birth plan A and went through birth plan B, C, D, E. At the end, I got a baby. So, when I shared my fears about my upcoming motherhood with my own mother, she said, "Don't worry, it's going to be fine. You will take one look at your child, one look, and the first time you lay eyes on that child, you would throw yourself in front of a bus to protect them. You would stare down a bear, a fleet of bears, it doesn't matter. You would do anything to protect them." So there I was in the NICU, stitched up, doped up on all sorts of really good pain medications, 7 hours later, holding this little bundle of Winston Churchill-esque baby for the first time. I felt little more than confusion and terror looking at this child, knowing that this was my son. This was my entry into motherhood, and yet still not knowing what it meant, still not emotionally connecting with the experience. What I learned about motherhood from the media, from society, from my own mother, didn't resonate with me at that moment, and it was a really frightening thing to experience. So, I took him home from the hospital. It was terrifying, but we did it. We became instantly responsible for this little creature that at first refused to nurse properly, leading to all sorts of additional feelings of terror and inadequacy on my part as various postpartum hormones flooded my system. And we tried everything from taping a tube to my chest to get him to nurse, to feeding him from a shot glass. My midwife had all sorts of ridiculous suggestions. None of them worked at first. It was terrifying. So, Back when I was pregnant and planning my post-birth experience, I insisted that everyone stay away for the first week or so because I wanted to bond with my child, with my husband. I wanted to know what it was to suddenly be a couple with a child without everyone coming in and telling me what I should be doing. After that first night, with no milk and a howling baby, I got on the phone with my mother. I called her up and I said, "Mom, please help me, come." She got in a car, drove the 5 hours, despite the fact that she does not like highway driving. She did it. She came and she mothered me as I learned to mother myself. It was with her by my side as I wandered through the cereal aisle of my local grocery store on my first post-baby outing that I got a call from my midwife. She told me that a test done in the hospital had been processed in a batch of other tests and that a lot of them had turned up a potential hit for a very rare and very unpleasant disorder, and that I needed to bring my son to a special hospital a couple hours away to get him the real test. She told me that it was almost certainly a false positive. Don't worry, the test would be done in a couple of days, coinciding with my birthday. I hung up the phone, looked at my child, and it was at that moment that I knew what mothering was. Good mothering. The desire for your child to have the best life they can. And I knew that if it turned out that he was positive for this disorder, that my job was going to be being his advocate, being his strength when he didn't have strength, his voice when he didn't have a voice, and finding ways to give him the strength and the voice to fight his battles when he could. I stared at him and I felt the love that my mother had told me about, as the postpartum hormones made it impossible to avoid very public tears all over Cheerios. I spent that birthday of mine in the hospital, passing this tiny child to various medical professionals. They took his blood, otherwise examined him, and 2 days later, on Mother's Day, my midwife called me. He was fine. And among the relief that flooded through my body was the awareness that just because this time we were lucky did not necessarily mean we'd be lucky in every situation, and that someone else was getting a life-changing phone call on Mother's Day that would test her strength and mothering in ways that she had never expected. I realized that I was a mother, connected to a great history of parenting, loving, mistake-making, and dreaming. I realized that I would be there for my child despite my fears, my hesitations, despite my incredible flaws as a human being. That my job as a mother would be complex and expose all of my uncertainty on a daily basis, but it would also help me hone my strengths and help me learn new ones as I helped lead my child from what he was to what he would be, hopefully as I showed him the best of myself as often as possible.
Good morning. I did not give birth to either of my children, but I did get to bring them home from the hospital as newborns 3 years apart. As a foster-adopt mom, my initiation into motherhood was sudden and fraught with the possibility that I would see them reunified with their troubled birth parents. I realize now that what I experienced then was in most ways no different from the experience of other mothers who worry about the health and future of their children and hope that they will be able to thrive. My little ones aren't so little anymore. Laura is 12 and Aiden turned 9 yesterday. In some ways, mothering has shifted dramatically since their early childhood years. I no longer have to bathe and dress them. I don't have to change diapers or help them to the potty. Only one of them needs an occasional reminder to lift the seat. In other respects, my experience has remained remarkably the same. Laura exudes typical tween, "you're not the boss of me" attitude, but then I think she has since she was the age of 2. So our mother-daughter relationship hasn't really changed all that much. Aiden, in an effort not to be Laura's minion, has developed some of her Teflon coating. He doesn't walk softly, but he is almost never without a big stick. He ninja slices the air and swaggers around the house with "don't mess with me" bravado. And yet, at 9 years old, he still needs the nighttime assurance of my presence. His superhero saves the day fantasy world is easily shattered by schoolyard reports of real-world catastrophes, child abductions, houses burning down, 7.8 magnitude earthquakes. So here is my current maternal dilemma.
How do I prepare Aiden to live fully in a world that is filled with bad news? How do I shield him from the ugly realities of the world and still prepare him to face them, not just with courage and hope, but with the resolve to pursue justice? Not superhero justice, not retaliatory justice, but human-crafted social justice. The world is both wonderfully tantalizing and horribly terrifying. I suppose it has always been this way. Nurturing children through the contradictions of our human experiences, well, hard. I want to encourage Aiden and Laura's imaginations, but in doing so, I must concede that the outer fringes of their imaginings can usher in unwelcome truths about how fragile and vulnerable we all are. The notion that I may not always be able to fulfill my maternal responsibility to protect them may be the first and most hurtful chip in the block of their innocence. But it is also essential to their growth and maturity. What mother doesn't want to spare her children disappointment and disillusionment? What mother possibly can? Aiden recently read Dr. Dolittle. His favorite character is the push-me-pull-you, part unicorn, part gazelle. This two-headed animal, like Janus, faces opposite directions. I think of Aiden and Laura at this age facing two directions at once, fantasy and reality, childhood and adulthood, one step forward, two steps back. I know that Laura and Aiden want to see and know the world as it is, yet they linger in the world of Superman and Halloween candy. They reach out for this world that once was, the one with assurances and predictable routines, but it eludes them. They move toward a world that forces them to scale dreams that contain nightmares with unintended consequences and uncomfortable ambiguities. Unitarian Universalists are good at acknowledging these realities, but none of us has fully mastered the course. Young children trust that we have. Aiden and Laura's growing awareness that their mother doesn't have it all figured out can be amusing at times, but it also weighs on me. I cannot pretend that I don't have my own worries and terrors to keep at bay. Some of them in direct relationship to Laura and Aiden's future and what I know about their birth parents, who succumbed to their own mental demons and addictions. When I'm not careful to keep grounded in the here and now and to consciously stave off the specter of what if each time I hear a report about bipolar disorder or the latent effects of meth abuse, my parenting becomes reactive and fear-driven. Any of Laura and Aiden's missteps become, in my irrational mind, evidence of an endangered future. There's no reason that Laura and Aiden should carry the burden of my worries about what might be. So I wonder how I can be honest about my own frailties, about the sadness and alienation that is part of living, and still allow them to maintain their open-armed engagement with the world. How can I help them follow their bliss, knowing that the journey won't always be blissful?
Hello. I'm covering mothering in the teenage years. Every stage of parenting, childbirth, infancy, preschool, preteen, I have thought, I have never grown or been challenged this much in my whole entire life. Being a parent is the toughest job ever. Well, that sentence to the 16th exponential power is how it is to raise children during ages 12 to 20, or thereabouts, and I have 3 of them. Payback's a bitch. I remember when I truly thought my mother didn't know anything, when I was embarrassed by her, when I sneaked around and worried her, when I ignored her, when I questioned everything she did. My mother died last year, and I am fortunate I got to apologize to her for giving her such a hard time as a teenager and as a young adult. She replied, "Oh, you were not that bad." Thank God. Forgiveness heals whichever direction it goes. I hope my kids forgive me for spouting things like, "I just can't take it anymore," at moments when the perceived disdain toward me from them got to my core. I know it's their job to push their parent away evolutionarily so that they can believe within themselves that they can make it out there in the world. As a therapist, I tell that to parents of teens who are in desperation about how to cope. There is a load of research in neuroscience validating that experience as actual fact. Adolescent brains are going through pruning. It's a bumpy time developing a healthy prefrontal cortex. Parents are just in the way of their burgeoning confidence. And actually, in some ways, the teenage brain is smarter and more capable than ours are. Groundbreaking Olympians, inventors, mathematicians, entrepreneurs, and musicians often are born from the teenage years. I know my oldest daughter, Lauren, in some ways surpassed me in her development long ago. In math, for sure, in organization, yes, in understanding finances and accounting, yes. But did she have to rub my face in it? Yes. She had to let me go and believe in herself. Since turning about 14, she wasted no time fulfilling her role as a demonstrative, curious, strong-willed, fiercely independent, confused, emotional, know-it-all, heartbroken, distractible, hardworking, inexhaustible teen. When Lauren was within the final weeks and days of spreading her wings to go away to college, she was in full form. I could do nothing right. If I planned a night out for dinner with her, it was wrong. If I didn't know her schedule at work or with her friends, I was wrong. If I didn't take her shopping for the right college prep supplies, I was wrong. When I gave her a care package of odds and ends I'd been saving, lamps, silverware, closet organizers, dishes, it was all wrong. The abuse increased as the date got closer. You didn't even help me apply for college. You haven't listened to me. You're not even helping me pick out things I need. You don't know how busy I am working, house sitting. You don't even know who my roommates are. The last night, she raged at me, attacking my whole self as a parent. My world collapsed. I was reduced to tears. I thought there was nothing I could do to successfully say I raised her. In her mind, as I was hearing it, I was a failure. She knew just where my buttons were. I went out to my car, gasping in tears. I called a Live Oak friend, a fellow parent. It takes a village. She told me, she is so scared and anxious right now. All she needs is your love. How can you love her right now? Shoving my emotions aside, akin to lifting the weight of a truck off of my child, using strength I did not know I had, I went back in, calmly asking her if I could talk to her for a minute. I said to her, Lauren, when you get there, when you get to Cal Poly, you'll find your people. You'll find the support you need. You'll know who you click with, who are good for you to help you thrive, teachers and friends. I told her that my number one job in raising her was for her to keep that internal gauge of herself, of who she really is, and what she needs in her life in order to express herself and live out her true nature. I told her the story of her first experience with baby food. She was in the high chair trying out peas, prunes, and carrots. At first tasting little bites from the spoon. She then took some out of her mouth and pressed it between her fingers. Then she found the spoon, put it in the jar, and put some on her hands, and then on her face, and then in her hair. She made a beautiful brownish, orangish green collage on the high chair tray. I watched her learning about stickiness, and she had fun. It was too early to teach her table manners. She wanted to feel baby food in her hair, in her ears, and all over her face. Lauren was listening to me and began to smile through her anxiety. I told her, you've always been that way. You dive in. You got in trouble in Girl Scouts for diving headfirst in the pool before it was time. When visiting your aunt in the winter, in Nebraska, you tantrumed about going outside until there was nothing I could do but take you out in sub-zero temperatures, all bundled up and trying to make snow angels on the driveway. In 2.5 minutes with your teeth chattering, you shivered and said, I want to go back inside. You got bleach all over your wardrobe when you tried washing your clothes all by yourself. You failed a class when you wanted to see how that felt. You got the jobs you wanted to. You chose a college path, doing every step along the way because that's who you are. And my goal in raising you was for you to never lose who you are, to know yourself, how you learn best, and what you want in life. I told her, I have faith in you, because just like how you wanted to experience peas and carrots and prunes, spreading them all over you, you'll experience more and fun and exciting things, and you'll find people who accept you the way you are. 3 years later, she recently has been calling me for advice. Imagine that I actually know something. She shared some comedy with me that she saw on Facebook that said, "Teenagers, are you tired of being harassed by your stupid parents? Act now. Move out, get a job, and pay your own bills while you still know everything." Yeah. She shared that with me. A friend and fellow parent said to me, if I realized how little I knew at age 18, I would have never gotten out of bed. As a parent of teens, there is bittersweetness in letting go. Our children drop from the nest with weak but ready wings despite their own incredible power and despite all their angst felt by all. Our children, like the child inside us all, has been mothered, and the mother source inside of all of us needs to continue to be there. Launching my son, Spencer, last year, after his commencement, I wrote this poem. Here starts the poem. My son's commencement. A royal blue and scarlet red sea of hopes. Between two towering goalposts, minutes fade like crunching leaves, once golden. He steps toward emptiness. I want to leap for him, but I must stay behind, performing my final task, an open hand, ungrasping anything left undone. Now to him it falls. Tassels in the grass, pictures taken, his eyes stare, his friends amuck in dazes similar. They are men with the search and their stubble interrupting the play. They call it commencement like I'm supposed to ignore an ending altogether. I don't. I see a flood of accomplishments. When you won that medal, when you first trimmed your hair, when I bought you bigger clothes, swim lessons, the saxophone, the SAT 3 times. Making a human being is one thing. Letting them go is real work. Love never explains the end. This sea of royal blue and scarlet red is a love story's ending and a beginning. We part like the sun, melting a glacier into the ocean's ebbing off a perfect mountain. Your favorite book in 2nd grade was The Far Side of the Mountain, and look at you now. This feeling has more grief than I would have planned for, neither because of my yearning for more, nor because I fear aloneness. I am just disoriented from my soul's work all of a sudden. Pomp and circumstance cues me to step back. You know how to grow. Something inside you, a seed, fed and watered by many along the way, you are flourishing, and your petals, the blonde sheen of your hair, your orthodontist honed smile, your gait proud, moving away from me and toward. There ends the poem. Both relief and frightful dis-ease comes while letting each of my kids go through another layer of doing their own thing. Yes, there's more room for me, yet I know without a doubt that this mothering thing is actually about mothering myself. They learn by example, and mothering is a lifelong career. Mothering anyone, anything, is the most important career anyone could ever have. With Jasmine still at home, I still get that frequent, "Oh my God, Mommy, what are you talking about?" accompanied by that look of disgust. I remember the unwavering loyalty of my mother, her silent caregiving, her humble health food store shopping and cooking, and just her presence. Though I thought I hated her at times, she gave me life. No matter how stupid we think our mothers were or are, real or imagined, we're all part of the mothering circle that contains all of life, the pain and humiliation, and the thank yous in the company. They do come back too. Spencer called me yesterday, In the conversation, I was telling him that his room was serving now partly as an office for me. He exclaimed, "But I need my room this summer. I have to have my room." I've discovered it's never really over.
Now to the grown children. Someone gave me a calendar with quotes about mothers once, and I have two favorites. The first is, a mother is someone who tells her grown child to remember to put a sweater on when it gets cold. The other, a mother is someone who watches her 30-year-old child for signs of improvement. There must be many more quotes that remind us what it is to be a mother. I look back on my mothering and realize I've been a mother for over 50 years tomorrow. My oldest, that age, my youngest, 29, and I have a 22-year-old grandson. I have 2 biological kids, 2 adopted. I was 50 years old when the 2 adopted boys joined our family. Mothering grown children is an interesting journey. It's wonderful to see them with kids of their own, to see them struggle with the things I once struggled with as a young parent. I have great grown people. They have their own lives and ways of living those lives. When I look back on the years spent raising them, I do wonder how I made it. Since my second biological child was 2, I've been a single mother. I've always worked, teaching, running craft and weaving shops, sometimes just scraping by. I remember in Bellingham, Washington, making and selling muffins at the nearby university. And also that year, when my car broke down and we needed to get home to Santa Barbara, picking strawberries with the Lummi Indians on cold, foggy mornings. I look back and remember the time my 10-year-old son, exhausted from a day in those fields, asked me, is this one of those memories that I'm going to cherish, Mom? I assured him it wasn't, although it is still a memory we laugh about whenever we get together. My relationships with my grown children are complex. I love them and want to be in every aspect of their lives, but I realize that I'm actually on the edges of those lives now. My oldest son has a boy with hemophilia and carries a great responsibility parenting him. He's a devoted father and has had to be a caregiver and advocate for this son. I wish I could spend more time with him and his family, but they're way down in Austin, Texas, and their lives are very full. I understand when I don't get the weekly call, and I understand the demands he faces, but sometimes I feel hurt because my little boy has another family now that he is responsible for. You want them to grow up, and you still want them to be your babies. My daughter's in Santa Barbara with her family. Our relationship has been a rocky one. Looking back, I see that the problems facing me in her formative years had a great effect on her. Our family was often in turmoil. Those were very difficult times. As a young mother thrust into being a single parent, I was overwhelmed. And looking back now, I realize I did the best I could. We made it through those hard days, but not without consequences. My other 2 children are not married, although my middle son, Timmy, has a daughter that most of you know, Samaya. Timmy has had a very rough time. His biological family in South Central had many gang connections, and he has not been able to stay out of trouble with the law. Mothering him as an adult has been a challenge. It was finally time for tough love, and last year I had to make the decision that he couldn't be an active part of our family anymore until he gives up that gang lifestyle. It's been very hard on us. We love him, and yet it's too dangerous for us to be a part of the lifestyle he's chosen. But we do pray that someday he'll come around to finding a better, safer way to live. My younger son is like the character Alex P. Keaton in the old sitcom Family Ties. He has rebelled against his old hippie mom by being very conservative, a businessman. He even gave me a book on basic economics for Christmas. I know he was hoping to help me grow up. Needless to say, it remains unopened in pristine condition, if any of you are interested in it. He and I do have a very close relationship. He's my baby. He calls at least once a week and visits often. He loves his siblings and nieces and nephews and looks forward to spending time with all of us. One thing I'm facing as an older mother of grown children is a shift that's happening in our relationships. I think my bout with cancer was the shift that became obvious to me. They're feeling now the need to start caring for me. I see it and appreciate the thought, but it's difficult for me to accept this new way of being with them. Now, I'm being a grandmother. I just enjoy my grandkids. I love to play with them, to spoil them, and thoroughly enjoy the times I do get to be with them all. Looking back, it's been quite a journey. Each day still brings new adventures, still family time when it happens, and I still continue to mother.